We are on the lunch break on the third day of questioning of the former Detective Chief Inspector of the Special Demonstration Squad, HN58, who served between 1997 and 2001. He's been questioned further on the authorizations documents, about the fact they were almost entirely fictional, certainly copy and paste of each other. He's been questioned quite extensively about the way in which Helen Steele was on the trail of John Dines in New Zealand. We got to see lots of the correspondence that existed between Bob Lambert and New Zealand police, resulting in Steele being prevented from entering the country in future. And we also got onto his knowledge, we got onto the visits that by senior police and the HMIC to the SDS safe house and the results of those. And then we got onto his knowledge of the NPORU, which was the other spy cops unit, the one that was set up in the late 90s and ran in the rest of the country, not in London.
No, it did have various people in London, which is hopefully something we will come to.
Yes, sure, yeah. But it was kind of, whereas the SDS was focused on London and wasn't outside. I guess that's the key point. Starting with looking at those authorizations, he had to admit that essentially they were copy paste. He tried to push back, going like, they're very similar. The Croydon Hunt Sabs and London Animal Action, so no wonder they were the same. What the authorizations claimed was that these deployments were required to gather intelligence on potential attacks on prominent individuals, including members of the royal family and others, which obviously, these... Because of where Ripper had come in these authorizations from January 2000, a lot of the officers in question had been deployed for like 3 years at this point. And it was very clear that is not what they were doing. That in reality, if the truth of what their deployments were about were included in these authorization documents, they would have never been signed off because they didn't meet the threshold for the requirement of what serious crime is.
Yeah, and just to go back, the thing on the Chester royal family, it's like, so this was clearly, he's an Amorite, so it's clearly hunting, Prince Charles, Princess Anne, the rest of them all going out hunting. I don't know if anyone's ever see a hunt go through the centre of London. No. You're talking about areas outside the police district, and not just like, down in Surrey. They're quite far away. The hunts that they went out, such as the Quorn, Badminton, or in Gloucestershire, middle of England, and would have had loads of protection around anyway. There was one incident, and just a little bit of history, is where Princess Anne was out hunting and some Sabs were standing at the gates, and she basically opened the gate from oiks, and they started spitting at her. That's the level of right, she was rude, she got treated as she should have been. But they have clearly made it up into this sort of the royal family are at danger. It's like, where is your evidence for that? And James Thompson's in Croydon Sabs, they primarily sabbed in Surrey and Kent and Sussex, very violent hunts. They were up against something, but the royal family weren't there. So what are you talking about?
It just feels like this was copy and pasted into each of the authorization blurbs, and it feels like it's just a way of like going, look, it's the royal family, we must do it.
And you see it with others, particularly around Simon Wellings, where they keep Socialist Workers' Party, Socialist Party. They can, it's like, it's that, it's like, if you were reviewing and doing this carefully, apparently they spend ages reviewing these documents. Like, if you know your material, it's such an obvious mistake.
What's becoming really clear is they're not reading stuff generally. The fact that none of these witnesses seem to have any sort of appreciation of what the paperwork actually said, or what it was meant to even look like. They're presented with stuff, and it's like, oh right, what's this? Because at the time they never bloody read anything.
And it's very clear that Ripper, I was saying this the other day, is just like, for all it was meant to bring a new era, formalized era, to ensure that undercover policing met the needs, met the law. It was really just lip service in the SDS. And it's part and parcel of that wider attitude of they don't need good practice from other unions. All other unions are doing their own thing, but the SDS are the elite, they're special. they don't need to have best practice because they're so far ahead of everybody else in terms of corruption and abuse. But that's the bit to leave out.
Yeah. We then got to a very long section on Helen Steele tracking John Dines in New Zealand and the knowledge that HN58 had of that. He admitted in his written statement that he knew this was the case. He wasn't sure when he learned, though. He said in his written statement it was when he was Detective Chief Inspector of the SDS, but not specifically when. I mean, we were shown a letter from John Dines to Bob Lambert. We've been shown it before. That puts January '98 as the obvious time when Lambert would have informed HN58, but he's not sure about that at all. And he answered, couldn't recall, to such a huge number of questions. I mean, to the point I'm afraid I didn't record most of those questions in my tweets because there was no point. I don't recall. I have no memory of that. But essentially, what it really showed was a lot of correspondence that was taking place by Bob Lambert as Detective Inspector of the SDS with New Zealand police, getting New Zealand police to prevent Helen Steele from entering New Zealand.
Yeah. Why was Bob Lambert involved?
Right.
Why is he, somebody from out, who had left the unit? Why was he being in here to clean up the mess of basically his very, very good friend and colleague, acolyte, John Dines? Is there something not right there? But again, it's not credible that he's the DCI, he's the head of the unit overseeing stuff. He's in the same office, as HN53, who's also dealing with this. The idea that if he's not dealing with this, it's such a dereliction of his own duty. Just putting ourselves into their space. This is a dereliction of duty.
Well, I mean, he was dealing with it because even though he said he couldn't remember, we were shown memos and file notes that show that he was briefing Roger Pierce. And we got written notes back from Roger Pierce thanking him for the written briefings and also all the verbal briefings that he received in January. So it's clear that he was getting the information from Lambert about what the situation Dines was in and relaying that up the chain of command. He claimed not to remember any of it, but I mean, there's so much of a paper trail there that it's very clear that he was fully briefed, fully aware at the time, and he's just denying it now.
And for such a big event, it's like, it's exercising. You got Thompson and you got this exercising all energy and management. And how can you not recall this? It's just not credible. It's like if you cannot recall this, you really cannot recall anything. But that's clearly not the case.
Well, one of the things that 58 kept doing was when it was presented to him as an issue of operational security, he went, "Oh, I think it was a welfare issue for the officer. I think it was really about welfare. This was all about welfare." Really deflecting the fact that obviously, if Dines had been exposed, it would have exposed the whole unit. I think that David Barcasey really well summed it up, going, the practical impact of your actions was to prevent the exposure of a wrong that delayed justice, any public knowledge of the wrongs that were being done. I mean, essentially, if he hadn't intervened the way he had, perhaps this process we're currently going through now would have happened 20 years ago.
Well, they were not misogynist at all. No, there was no sexism. We'll just to cover up the abuse of this woman who's clearly,
absolute farce. We then got on to the visits that took place as a result of a very glowing thank you note from Vaness, David Vaness, the Assistant Chief of Special Operations, to the SDS for the SDS annual report of 96, 97, saying that he'd be happy to come visit. And then he has a visit. There's a document which was produced of pen portraits of the undercover officers who he all meets, and apparently it's a morale boosting event, which HN58 tried to play down as something to sell the unit to senior management, but I mean, it seemed very clear it was that. It was interestingly, we were shown those pen portraits, particularly in the case of HN81, who was the one who was infiltrating the Stephen Lawrence family. It was his deployment was sold as a success in that it prevented movement for justice from influencing the Lawrence family, and he was ideally placed to report on the way in which Movement for Justice were aggravating black youths and, in inverted commas, victims of deaths in police custody. There was it was clear that the visit of Vanessa was kind of like a sign that the SDS was on the right track and everything was going really well.
And as we point out, that Vanessa was not a special branch officer,
No.
so he's a rare visit from somebody outside of their own brethren.
Yeah, there was another visit actually from HMIC, an inspection in theory, but the guy was there for an hour and a half. He met with HN81 and HN26, who apparently were briefed to give like just a flavour of what their deployments were. There was a inspection of the processes, but nothing about the actual deployments. Again, it feels like a rubber stamping exercise, which didn't really, you cannot put either of these things in the class of like oversight of the unit in any sense.
No, and the real question is why they felt they needed this inspection, how it came around. Clearly, something's up. But it's also embarrassing that they've had these visits, they've been told all these great things, and what comes after.
Well, quite, yeah.
So, you got Dines, True Spies, you got the Officer AB case, Peter Francis, suing the police. It's like, so in many ways, I think it probably backfired. People came along and said, "Oh, what's this potential embarrassment? Oh no, everything's perfect. We will create all these policy documents to show how actually organized we are, and throw them in the bin afterwards." But to get stung by their own propaganda, the reality comes out shortly after that. There's major issues.
Well, HN26, who meets with the HMIC inspectorate, she's been responsible for this mink release that's not long happened at that point. She's very soon after is going to tell her target, Joe Tax, the fact that she's an undercover police officer, leave the police to be with him. It's right under their noses. There's nothing done about it. Then just before the break, we started looking at the knowledge that HN58 and the SDS had about the National Public Order Intelligence Unit. So the National Public Order Intelligence Unit is the other Spy Cops unit. It's the one that much later on Mark Kennedy is an undercover officer for. Lynn Watson, Marco Jacobs. There's a whole bunch of them. But it's that unit which is exposed in 2010 by activists whilst it's still in operation. And according to HN58, they had no knowledge of who the NPORU officers were, and the NPORU officers had no knowledge of who the SDS officers were. There was no sharing. There was a new mechanism put in place for the sharing of intelligence that might be useful to this new unit, but there was no feedback between the two. I'm guessing that after lunch, when we go back in, we'll be looking more into that, just because obviously these two units are infiltrating a lot of the same groups, certainly the same networks, if not even literally being in the same meetings. The idea they weren't unaware of each other is nonsense. I mean, on a personal level, I'm fully aware that Marco, I met Simon Wellings with Marco Jacobs. They knew each other, both undercover officers in different units. There's obviously a relationship there. It'd be interesting to see if more of that is exposed.
So just for context, for those who will be following, in the era where 58 is in the SDS, you got Andy Coles turning up in the NPORU, helping them with the training, and no doubt encouraging his own wonderful bad practice.
Well, including the stealing of dead children's identities, which had been stopped by the SDS by this point, but he didn't realize it was no longer being done, so he introduced it to the NPORU. So they revived the practice, which is quite wild.
And one of the officers involved in that was Rod Richardson, who's an environmentalist, but turns up in London, targeting movement against the monarchy, along with another then NPORU, NPORU.
National Public Order Intelligence Unit.
Should know by now. HN66 Dave Jones. So they're moving in circles. Well, Jones is based in London. Rod Richardson is in and out of London. So why are they there? They're in the MPYU. Jones, we know, actually, gets chucked out of MPYU because he fails the training course. Shows, they have slightly higher standards, but then later gets recruited by the SDS when he goes into London Riding Tide. But before that, he had this regional thing. So you've got these undercovers in London from the MPYU. Why didn't you? Were you reporting on it? Jackie Anderson and Jason Bishop are in the same set of circles. The idea that nobody knew it,
nonsense.
But also says, if just taking for argument's sake that they didn't know each other, then what the hell were the senior managers doing?
Right.
You can't have it both ways.
No, it's really. It's really telling. We've heard multiple times throughout these hearings of how the public order intelligence from the SDS was treated with derision by public order. And in many ways, the National Public Order Intelligence Unit is set up because they don't trust what the SDS is giving them. They don't believe it. They don't find it useful at all. So they want to find their own way of getting that intelligence.
Well, and also it emerges from a set of units, one of which is the Animal Rights National Extremists, which was Space's special branch, Metropolitan Special Branch, but worked on a national level. The other units that were folded into it were very much focused on free parties and travellers. So. And it's set up with the principle of being evidential gathering, which is the opposite of the SDS, which is simply gathering intelligence for its own sake. It's very focused on animal rights, very focused on environmentalists. That seems not bad, especially now that subversion has gone out the window. But it's a strange question why you would set up a national unit and then kind of just exclude London. They don't. Yeah. Why does London still need to be field special?
Right. Totally. But yeah, we're now going into the last session this afternoon of HN58. A lot of people have expressed a lot of surprise at how much we've actually got out of his appearance at the inquiry. On Monday morning, we were really feeling like, well, we're not going to get much out of this guy. And he's done his best to try and hide his what he knows, what he does clearly remember, by pretending not to remember things. But he's been painted into a corner numerous times and ended up revealing stuff that I really believe he didn't want to.
He certainly undermined an awful lot of other officers' evidence, as well as throwing a bunch of them, like Lambert and 53, under the bus. I also get the feeling that today he's got less of a hangover.
Yeah.
This is the previous 2 days, he really felt like somebody was really under the weather, and I didn't realize how much until I went, somebody's had a good night's sleep.
There is we've had a comment. Someone saying, "Can I take it from all the clinking of glass and glugging sounds that the DCI has rather a dry mouth?" Yeah, yes. I certainly get the impression he's almost nervously drinking water.
It takes skill to lie that long.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, and he's not been a particularly creative with his not remembering. It's just the same phrase over and over again now. But yeah, we'll be going back in fairly soon. Actually, this afternoon's broadcast should be starting about 2:15. I'll be sharing the link. So please do join us for that. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No.
All right. See you again in a bit. We'll do another video during the afternoon break, and then at the end of the day, I'm hoping to get